Welcome everyone. Today let us have a look at some of the properties of an AP. By properties I mean what happens to an AP if we add, subtract, multiply or divide a certain constant number to it. So for an AP, in its general term we write the first term as A, and then since it is an AP, all the consecutive terms will increase by a fixed difference D. So A plus D, A plus 2D, A plus 3D, and so on. And let's say we have n terms and our general term is A plus n minus 1 times D. So for the very first case, let's say when we add a constant, let's say we add a constant C1, let's say, or C, we add a constant C to this AP, then what happens to this AP is all the terms gets added. So we have A plus C, we have A plus C plus D, we have again A plus C plus 2D, and so on. We'll also add C to the nth term, so it will be A plus C plus n minus 1 times D. So what is happening here? This sequence that we obtain if we add a constant C to every term of an AP, this is still an AP. If you subtract these two terms, what is the difference? D. If you subtract these two terms, the difference is D. So if you add a constant to an AP, the sequence still remains an AP. Only the first term changes, the C gets added to it, but the common difference remains the same and the sequence also remains an AP. Now let's say we subtract a constant. So what happens to the AP now? We get A minus C, and again we have A minus C plus D, A minus C plus 2D, and so on. A minus C plus n minus 1 times D. And again, if you'll see, you subtract this with this, you again get your common difference as D. Here also the common difference is D, so it still remains an AP. So if you add a constant C or subtract a constant C from an AP, the sequence still remains an AP. The common difference remains the same, that is D. So we still have common difference as D here, we still have common difference as D, the common difference is D, the common difference is D. So the common difference remains the same in both the cases, only the first term of the sequence changes. Now let's see what happens if we multiply a constant C. If we multiply, then we get, the first term becomes AC, the second term becomes AC plus DC, the third term is AC plus 2DC, and you can write the nth term as AC plus n minus 1 times CD. So if you subtract this with this, you get a common difference as DC. If you subtract this with this, you get the common difference as 2DC minus DC, DC, and so on. So what we see here is that this sequence still remains an AP, but the common difference gets multiplied by the constant. So if you multiply an AP with a constant, let's say C, then the first term gets multiplied by C, so the first term is AC, and the common difference, the modified common difference now is CD. So the common difference also gets multiplied, but the sequence still remains an AP. For the last case, let's say we divide by a constant C. So what happens when we divide? We get A by C. Again here we have A by C plus D by C, then we have A by C plus 2D by C, and so on. So if you calculate the common difference here, what you will see is, if you subtract these two, you get difference as D by C. If you subtract these two terms, you get D by C. So the arithmetic progression still remains an arithmetic progression, but the first term gets divided by C and the common difference also gets divided by C. So just a recap, if we have an AP, if we add a constant C to the AP still remains an AP, the common difference remains the same, D. only the first term changes to a plus c. The same is if you subtract a constant, the sequence still remains an AP, the common difference remains the same d, it's just that the first term gets reduced by c, so the first term is a minus c. Now if you multiply the given AP with a constant c, then the first term gets multiplied AC, but the sequence still remains an AP and the constant difference or the common difference gets multiplied by C. So the new common difference is CD. And similar is the case for divide. If you divide an AP by a constant C, then the AP still remains an AP, but the common difference gets divided by that constant C. So for multiplication and division, the common difference gets changed. If you multiply, it gets multiplied by the constant. If you divide, it gets divided by the constant, but the sequence still remains an AP. So these are some of the properties to keep in mind, and when you solve different questions, this may come handy sometimes.